When Ollie Alexander was announced as the artist to represent the United Kingdom at the 2024 Eurovision Song Contest, there were high hopes. In the end, however, the UK finished 18th. Not great, although not a complete disaster either. So, what can we learn from the latest chapter in the UK's Eurovision journey? In this video, we'll consider 4 lessons the UK, or more specifically the BBC, can learn from Eurovision 2024. It's called the Eurovision Song Contest, so the song is a logical place to start. There's no formula to having the ultimate Eurovision song, quite the opposite in fact. Having a formulaic song can do more harm than good. It needs to be a song so different, so out there, so emotional, that people are awed by what they hear. And that's where we run into the first problem as far as the UK is concerned. Since 2022, there's no denying that the quality of songs has risen considerably from before, but they've all been mainstream radio-friendly pop stars. It's worth bearing in mind how each of these 3 songs came about in the first place. Spaceman was written as a showcase of Sam's songwriting and vocal abilities to prospective record labels, specifically written to show off the best of himself. That made it ideal for the Eurovision Song Contest. I Wrote a Song and Dizzy, on the other hand, well, they were written for albums. They were never intended to be songs that blew people's socks off. While writing specifically for Eurovision can result in a formulaic composition that is just blatantly trying to tick a whole checklist of boxes, it can also bring about a song that really does wow. And at Eurovision, that's exactly what you have to do if you want any chance of reaching the upper parts of the scoreboard. So, lesson number 1 is rather than looking for a song that has already been written, likely for some upcoming album, consider having songs specifically written for Eurovision instead, ensuring that it has the impact and originality needed to stand out. Needless to say, if a British Eurovision act can achieve success in the charts, on the radio and indeed on streaming services, then that will help Eurovision more appealing to artists, labels and managers. So it's understandable that the BBC would favour songs that are likely to chart well and receive plenty of radio play. It keeps the music industry on board for a start, but it's a bit of a catch-22. You see, these kind of songs can struggle to stand out at Eurovision. Finding a song that can be a radio hit, a chart hit, and a Eurovision hit all at the same time is almost as difficult as Netta being able to correctly predict the next host city. That said, just because a song isn't the kind of thing you'd normally hear in the charts or on mainstream radio, it doesn't mean it can't be commercially successful. British mainstream radio wouldn't touch Finland's 2023 entry Cha 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 with a barge pole, but that didn't stop it from getting to number 6 in the UK Top 40, the highest a Finnish language song has ever reached. Therefore, surely it would be better to select entries based mainly on their compatibility with competing at Eurovision, and allow any commercial success to happen organically, rather than essentially trying to force it, especially as the latter isn't even totally guaranteed anyway. Dizzy only charted at number 42 a week after release, before crashing out of the top 100 together just a week later. Then after the contest, it only managed to crawl back up to number 48, while 3 other Eurovision songs, Croatia's Rim Tim Taggy Dim, Switzerland's winner The Code, and the disqualified Dutch entry Europapa, all fared better. And ironically, these aren't even typical chart-friendly songs. On the other hand, in 2022, there was no stated goal to get Spaceman to the upper stratosphere of the charts, just on the left-hand side of the scoreboard at Eurovision. Nevertheless, since that night in Turin, Sam Ryder has experienced great success. He's had 3 top 40 singles, a number 1 album, a Brit nomination, besides over a dozen other nominations and awards, and several television performances, such as for the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee and the BBC One New Year's Eve show. Now, most Eurovision fans will tell you exactly the same thing. Stop relying on radio-friendly, chart-friendly, mainstream pop songs. It's a strategy that will very quickly run out of steam. If you look at the top 5 of the past few contests, the vast majority of the acts don't fall into this category. Besides, there's so much more to the UK music industry than just pop. When was the last time the UK sent, say, a rock act? Well, never. Almost the entire roster is filled with pop and ballads. The UK music industry is incredibly diverse, with genres such as rock, indie, hip-hop, R&B, folk, and even Bhangra. So why not tap into these? Besides, Britain is known for being multicultural, so surely this should be reflected at one of the biggest cultural events in the world. Many countries have forged their own identity at Eurovision. Portugal typically opts for traditional, slower songs. Ukraine has lately favoured entries with a strong ethnic feel. Sweden, on the other hand, seems to regard anything other than mainstream pop in English as tantamount to treason. We really don't need another, albeit probably less successful, Sweden. And why do British entries always have to be in English? There are likely plenty of Scottish and Welsh artists who would love to take part in Eurovision. Sending a Welsh act could be really interesting and refreshing, not just for us hardcore fans, but even for the general British public. The BBC's remit is to represent all parts of the UK. They have entire radio stations and TV channels specifically for these alternative types of music and languages. So I reckon it's about time the UK took a risk and sent something different. If you want a more extensive consideration of reasons for and against the UK sending an act in another language, there's a previous video linked in the description. So the second lesson is to try sending different genres and even languages. It's as simple as that. In an interview with the Eurotrip podcast, BBC Music Commissioning Executive Will Wilkin and UK Head of Delegation Lee Smithhurst expressed their ambition for Dizzy to reach #1 in the charts and ultimately win the Eurovision Song Contest. Then, the teaser was released. The reception to it, and subsequently the full 3 minutes, was pretty lukewarm overall, with many fans being underwhelmed by what they heard. There was no denying that the track was very well produced, but for many the song lacked that wow factor and wasn't dynamic enough. It just went, quite literally, round and round. All the talk from the BBC about winning Eurovision, all the talk about achieving a #1 single, only stoked high expectations and ultimately set people up for disappointment. Now, obviously, that's not to suggest that the BBC should chase things like, well, our ambition is to come 17th, but don't promise a pot of gold if all you've got is a pot of bronze. A goal like in 2022 of just getting onto the left-hand side, with anything over and above that being a bonus, would potentially have been a better route to take. So, lesson number 3 is with regards to expectation management. Don't set expectations too high, because ambition is good, but a bit of modesty doesn't hurt. Last up is the all-important matter of whether to opt for an internal selection or a national final. Each has its pros and cons, and different countries have found success with different methods. For the UK specifically, going for an internal selection may help attract more established artists like Ollie Alexander, and let's be real, he wouldn't have competed in a national final anyway. However, listening to a song in the summer and thinking, oh, that's amazing, and a contender to win next year, well, that's one thing. But when you stack it up against the rest of the field at the start of the following year, well, there's the risk it was all a little bit delusional. Does the song stand out enough? How well does the artist perform live? How appealing is their creative vision? A national final does allow the act to be tested on these in a competitive live television environment. If the UK were to go for a national final, it would have to be a complete shift from what we've seen before. Eurovision, You Decide, lacked anything particularly exciting, and the performers were mainly industry nobodies who'd previously competed in reality shows such as The Voice and The X Factor. While it's true that most of the country's bigger artists would be unlikely to compete in a national final, smaller, emerging artists may well be up for it, especially if this hypothetical national final was to take a leaf out of the books of juggernauts such as Melodifestivalen, Finland's UMK, and the Italian behemoth that is the Sanremo Song Festival. While it's true that the winner typically goes to Eurovision, it's not the be-all and end-all of these shows, because many of the other entries featured achieve commercial success too. And the BBC, well, they could take a similar approach. Use the national final as an opportunity to promote some new and emerging talent in a variety of genres, and the winner going to Eurovision is sort of an added perk, as opposed to just getting the public to pick an act for Eurovision and then screw the rest. Returning to less established artists may have been an inevitable move after Ollie's shocking nul point from the public vote in Malmö, but any established artists who were previously interested may be having second thoughts. One other point worth mentioning is regard to the public and them making, shall we say, questionable choices. The simple answer to that is they can't pick dud entries if they aren't any dud entries to pick in the first place. Better to go down Finland's route of having a small selection of quality acts in UMK than something like Malta's monstrosity of mediocrity. Plus, having a jury, ideally international, can balance out the flaws in a popular vote. So to recap those 4 lessons: 1. Select a more impactful and original song. 2. Try different genres and languages. 3. Don't raise expectations too high. And 4. Consider holding a national final of quality acts. There's no denying that the BBC is taking Eurovision more seriously. Evidence of that is clear to see. The quality of songs has improved, the calibre of artists has risen, and the contest is now being given a much higher profile. And the BBC is willing to push the boat out. When we look at Ollie's performance, despite being put off by some of its overtly sexual undertones, the staging was some of the most innovative and ambitious we have ever seen at the Eurovision Song Contest. This kind of out-of-the-box vision is exactly what we need to see from the BBC when it comes to song selection too, because that 6th win is then sure to come sooner or later.